But the one thing which struck me about the editorial was the title, about the vultures circling.
Yeah.
Tell me how that came about and when you decided to write this very bold piece.
When we started talking about moving out to the printing plant, and there were cuts right around Thanksgiving as that was happening, it was very disheartening. It was angering. There had been this idea that if we consolidated, left the newsroom, and moved out to the printing plant, and then rented this space here so that a few of us could remain downtown, that the amount of money we'd save in rent was going to hold us for a while, and we wouldn't have to face these tough budget decisions for maybe a year or two. So to suddenly start seeing more talk of cuts before we even moved into the new newsroom, granted not on the scale that are being talked about that we're going through right now, I had the idea back then. Maybe we should start editorializing on our own company. And then when this new round came across, that idea popped back into my mind. And I've been doing these themed perspective editions, where you'll focus on an issue like Tabor, for example, and you have several writers weighing in, and then an expanded editorial. And that kind of was in the back of my mind when Ricardo Baca, formerly Denver Post reporter and editor and cannabis founder and what have you, reached out with this like really cool gonzo kind of approach. I've got a first person column where I could write about how strange it is to be protesting my own company when newspaper reporters hardly ever protesting. We don't protest. It's not in our ethics policy or our ethics manual. It just all started to click. And as far as using the word vulture circle, that's just a play on the word vulture capitalist to help capture the sense of who's kind of after us, but also the sense that if we don't act now, we really are looking at our own death. And so the vulture imagery works great.
So it's kind of a weird perspective because this is about you, but it's not about you.
Right.
In the sense that I think we do what we do because we want to serve to some capacity. Yet at the end of the day, we also have to put food on our table. But I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're the editorial writer, but this is something that everyone needs to pay attention to because it goes beyond just the printed pages of the paper. To have a strong news organization a strong community depends on a strong news organization.
And that's why we did it. And you're right, we usually try not to talk about ourselves. We care about what's going on in Colorado, not what's going on in our internal office politics. But a local paper like the Denver Post, whether it is or not, ought to be a public institution that is serving a watchdog role, that's serving an investigative role, that's speaking truth to power, that's providing a voice to the voiceless, that's doing the kinds of things that help a community be a community, that it's responsive to its community, it's reflective of a community's values. Those things need to happen. And because the cuts that we were looking at, in my mind, were so deep that it looked more like we were going to lose that completely. And when that happens, you find yourself in a situation where, well, someone needs to stand up and say something. And even if it means we have to call out our own company, our own owners. But if you think about it, it's not that out of the question. We run letters to the editor, we run columns that are critical of what the Denver Post does, that are critical of what our reporters do, that are critical of what we do on the editorial page. So why should we not also be able to be critical of our own owners? And once I got to that point and started talking to the other members of the board, it was pretty straightforward that, yeah, that's what we need to do. That's the right thing to do. And so it's risky. There are big potential pitfalls in a strategy like that, but it's the right thing to do, so that's what we're going to do.
Basically, your gut said, you know when you have to do something big and bold.
Yeah, right.
And I assume that's what happened here.
It's either stand up and speak up now or write your own obituary in 2 or 3 years.
An obituary that could impact the entire community.
I mean, think about that. It's possible that smaller niche news outlets can rise up to fill the role. It's possible that the TV and broadcast can step in and take over. But what a shame it will be if you don't have a central newspaper of record function. That has been the expectation and the practice of communities since the founding of our country. Why would you give that up if you didn't have to? Why wouldn't you fight as hard as you could to keep that?
it's emotional. It's not just a business decision for you. This is your blood and guts.
I've never been on such an emotional roller coaster as I've been the last several days.
The reason being,
the last several weeks.
Yeah.
Every time you go through one of these cuts, these are people that you've worked alongside. These are people who give it everything they've got, and they're doing it for good reasons, and their work's not being valued, and it's being lost, and the community's losing something profoundly important.
Your words, though, have had an impact. Letters to the editor, from what I understand, over the weekend.
Shot up, yeah. So many, and emails, calls, the social media post. It's really humbling, and I believe that is coming from a place that people aren't just like, oh yeah, they did something weird. They stood up to their own owners. It's coming from a place of, yes, something needs to be fixed, and you guys got it right. You believe it or not, you guys got it right, and that's not just here in Colorado, it's across the country.
Have you heard from the corporate heads of state, so to speak?
I have not. Meaning our owners?
Yes.
I have not. We did get some really nice support from the community. Some folks are talking to William Dean Singleton, the chairman of our board. I don't have anything to disclose or even believe that anything's in the works, but I know that there's been a lot of support and a lot of interest in the questions that we raised. And if you saw the New York Times piece that ran over the weekend, you saw that our own mayor, someone who we've not always been comfortable with on the editorial board, took a big stand for us and said, yeah, we ought to have a good local paper holding us accountable.
You think someone from the outside whose bread and butter is journalism, to be blunt, needs to rescue you?
I think so. Colorado and Denver have a lot of wealthy folks, a lot of smart, entrepreneurial, let's get things done kind of individuals. And they understand the importance of what I referred to earlier as the public institution that is a big newsroom. If you want to have a second Amazon headquarters here, if you want to have the Winter Olympics come here, if you want to have a governor's race that people can understand and follow, and think about how Denver's growing. 100,000 people have moved here since Alden bought us, and gentrification issues, affordable housing issues, all those kinds of pressures, the I-70 redevelopment. So many community-like stories to tell, and we're not covering them anywhere close to what we should be.
So, what is next? Is this day by day, hour by hour?
Well, and yeah, think what's going to be like after today when we're in the 60-ish, close to 70 range of employees. When my own department, I'm a three-member team back here in editorial, and I'm losing one of my folks. So now I'm a two-person team, and the editorial writer is on maternity leave, just starting recently, and so I'm a one-man team now. And what that's going to mean is that despite all this support that we've been getting, readers now are going to be asked to accept even less. When they open their paper in the morning, when they go online in the morning, when they turn on the phone in the morning, there's going to be less editorial content.
There is a responsibility, though, by readers in this community to also support an organization like the Denver Post. And maybe, well, it was all, in many ways, a call to the community to realize what you have here, and nothing is for free.
It's totally a signal to the community, to the readers, to be aware of what we're going through. I certainly understand if readers are so dissatisfied. It's expensive to subscribe to a paper. I understand if there's discontent. We're offering less. We're expecting them to pay more for less. But if you can send that message to the community and say, hey, we're trying, we want your help, we want your voices to be heard, and you couple that with a signal to the civic leaders, the folks who, again, should see this public institution role that a newspaper should play, demanding better, that hopefully better will come. Look, I look at my hometown paper, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Mm-hmm. It's a state that's smaller in size and smaller in population. And when I go home, I'm amazed and just so admiring of what they do out there. It's a really quality organization. They've got not one, but two newsrooms, bigger than us. And the work that they're doing is, we're not its equal. Colorado ought to have at least that. Look at Pittsburgh, a smaller town. It has upwards of 170 newsroom employees. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Star Tribune has more local ownership, and they've got a newsroom of around, well, more than 230, as I understand it. The Denver Post now is going to be in the 60-ish range. And surely it's possible that we could be more like those more family-owned, locally owned institutions that are still looking for profit. They still need to be profitable businesses. I'm all about the for-profit model, if at all possible. The nonprofit model is fraught with complications. But do you have to get 20%? Couldn't you make do with a little bit less? There are all kinds of industries that spend an enormous amount of time, energy, and resources to get by on margins much thinner than the ones that we're operating under.
And just to wrap things up, no regrets. This was, albeit rare, this was the time to do what you did.
Yeah. I hope I don't have to do something like this again, but I don't have regrets. The way Dean put it is, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror, you know. And I looked myself in the mirror a couple times this morning, just to make sure.
I appreciate it, Chuck. We could talk for a long time.